Hello everybody and welcome to my second ranch build. This time I was trying to challenge my idea that the ranch pack and the cottage living pack have excellent synergy. So I was building this ranch with only these two packs and base game. And I wanted to add the little romantic atmosphere of the cottage living pack by building this ranch on a little hill. So I wanted this to be on the hill and have a little angled section coming out of it on stilts. And this was a very, very bad idea because I kept struggling a lot. Here you see me building the angled sections that is gonna be on stilts. And because I have this angled section and because I put this on a little hill to make it more romantic, I'm adding two things that make it actually kind of hard to build a nice floor plan. So here you see me struggling. I cut out a lot of struggling with the floor plan, and I'm even not done with struggling with the floor plan once this section is over. I'm gonna go back to struggling with it some more. So this was a whole mess, but I think in the end it came out kind of good. At least for what I wanted, because with this build I was going for something that I don't usually like too much, and that is a sort of Pinterest vibe. So I wanted this to be somewhat modern, somewhat old, somewhat shabby chic vibes. Like somebody saw a bunch of pretty pictures in a magazine or on Pinterest and just wanted to have that perfect idea of their own romantic little cottage and just got that done. And I think the hill really helped with that because it allowed me to build a little romantic walkway up. Now this build has a lot of walkways, like it's on the biggest lot and everything is kind of spaced in a sort of distance to each other. That was done on purpose. It's not probably the most ideal for many styles of gameplay, but it allowed me to build this kind of fairy tale-like. So once I'm done with this section roughly, I'm not really doing much yet. I'm gonna move over to the stables of the horses. I'm gonna put in two stables, and I wanted these stables to be semi-open. So what I did was build a roof over the actual stable portion of this build, but then only fence it in and have pillars holding up the roof, and give it a little not roofed outdoor section as well, because I've seen these kinds of stables a lot and I think they match the sort of romantic atmosphere in a way. This romantic atmosphere really ties in together the ranch pack with the cottage living pack. That's why I'm also using these pale colors, white and pastels, to really tie in the two packs. It's not gonna be as rustic and old as the other ranch I built. This one is gonna be pretty and nice. But of course I don't only want to tie it in with the cottage living pack, but also with the ranch world around us. This is why, while I'm opting for white paneling for the house, I'm going with a more rustic stone footpath, and this is also why I kept the greenery and the ranch sign the lot came with, to just tie it in a bit more with the world and to further connect the romance with the nature of this pack. I also use a bunch of landscaping and the water feature to structure the place and really make it feel like somebody put their little ranch on this beautiful plot of land and made it their little oasis in a way. But of course a functional oasis, so I sectioned the garden off into 4 areas, one for each season, so you can really have your plants in order. I didn't go with a roofed garden though, because I think together with the winemaking skill, it's a tad bit overpowered to have access to each plant year round. And yeah, delivered as promised. I'm still fumbling around with the floor plan, still not quite happy with it, and believe it or not, this is not the last time this will change either. The shape I gave this building and the size of it made it really hard for me to find something that works. And stylistically, I'm still going with this Pinterest kind of look, like something that looks farmhousey but not necessarily super old. It could be a renovated old building, or it could be a newly built building that's kind of made to look a little shabby. You're not really supposed to know. It's ambiguous on purpose. So it's impractical in some ways, but also in a way that looks aesthetically pleasing. So it looks a little bit too on purpose to be an actual thing. And I kind of like that because that's often how I feel about Pinterest style. And that's also why I'm mixing dark wood with white wood, because that's a combination I see often in that cottagecore sphere, where this is supposed to make it look a little bit more rustic in a way. Like dark wood to set accents, but not too much to make the place actually look dark. We don't want that in this Pinterest place. So this is also kind of the theme I'm going with while painting the walls. I'm trying to go for something modern-y, pastel-y, but also kind of shabby in a way. Just not too much, just the right aesthetically pleasing amount. Like it is supposed to be styled by somebody modern with modern aesthetics who just happens to like shabby, ranchy styles and pastel colors. Finding the right wall colors for this with just the 2 packs and base game was surprisingly hard for me. I didn't think this would be a part where I struggled, but I did, especially in the bathroom. A lot of the things I would have thought of weren't there. And I also struggled with the flooring because I had to put in an angled room and the only angled floor wasn't there. It's in a pack. And so I had to kind of make do with what I had. And again, I changed the floor plans. And no, this isn't the last time either. It made furnishing the kitchen a little easier because I realized I had a tiny space and nowhere to eat. And having the dinner table in the living room section also felt kind of cramped. So I wanted to add it there. In the end, I opted with a long table but pushed against the wall so 3 people could sit there. Having this little nook really helped with structuring this room a bit better, so I could have one distinct dining section and one distinct kitchen section. It's a small kitchen, but it's sectioned off well. This matters a bit more in The Sims and in real life, honestly. It has all the essentials and it's all reachable. Sims can cook with 2 Sims if they want to. I tested that, and they can sit at all 3 chairs and it's all working fine. Curtains is actually another part where I really struggled because of my pack limit. We really need more viable base game curtain options. It's a travesty. However, decoration-wise, it looked good because the cottage living and the ranch decoration items go together beautifully. Like it really gives this the farmhouse aesthetic that I wanted from my Pinterest little cottage. And oh yeah, side note, who decided that the stackable plates should be in the table section? The way I looked for this for a solid 5 minutes before I found it is atrocious. But yeah, you see me decorating a bunch more. I used some of the new items, like the pots and pans rack, that I just love. I love this thing. I will use it so much. But also just general kitchen-y things. It's a small kitchen, so as always I try to make use of wall storage. It's a great hack to make small kitchens seem a bit more viable, to have open storage that shows clutter. And yeah, I made use of this instead of big artwork on most walls. And now, once again, you'll see me adjust the floor plan, but this is the last time, I promise you. After all this futzing around with it, I finally found a solution I can actually deal with. The reason why I extended the living area is because I wanted the living area to also have a little hallway-y looking area. I'm not too fond of open floor plans. They made furnishing harder and they make rooms look slightly less cozy, which is the opposite of what I wanted for this build specifically. But also you have less sections for things. And that means things are just kind of floating in the room, and that wasn't really the vibe I was going for. So giving the living room entry area a little section of hallway of its own really made it possible for me to find little nooks to put things, to give them little cozy areas to utilize. In this case, I wanted there to be a little oven. I really love this new oven. I'm probably gonna use it a bunch. And a reading section in that area, so that you have a little place away that's not always facing the door. You just don't want to be stared at by your neighbors that took the trail up to your house, you know what I mean? Also, using the big ass rug from the wrench pack also helped sectioning off the room a little bit to make it feel less of a giant empty space. Because, you know, that's good for lofts, but not really good for romantic little cottages on hills, you know? Of course, a bunch of plants, A, because that's the Pinterest aesthetic, and B, because this is a ranch, this is a cottage, we want the nature inside too. While I can't possibly live in a world without clutter, I purposefully try to make this space a bit less cluttered than I usually go. For one, because I didn't have any of my clutter packs, sadness, but also because the Pinterest aesthetic is more, you know, cleaned up, tucked away, and maybe purposeful items here and there, but not much of stuff lying around. This is an aesthetic cottage. This is an aesthetic ranch. It's not much of a working ranch in that way. And another round of struggling with finding curtains. This is so sad. We need more curtains. I cannot stress that enough. We need more curtains. We need so many more curtain options in base game. And because you have to climb down a mountain to get to the actual outside space, I try to make the balcony an extension of the living room, like have a bit more dining space, have an outside cooking space, and some skill building to just be outside without having to scale down that long pathway. And in the office, I try to include a bit of skill building because I really like that piano, but it turned out to be just too much, too cramped in that tiny room, so I scrapped it for this gorgeous secretary desk. And I gave it the old-timey computer from the Cottage Living Pack because that's just so fitting. And instead of a real bookcase, I just made use of the newly redesigned book stacks that now come in different colors and made it one long row of books, which is also very Pinterest to me. And it looked pretty in the room without being too big, as the other bookcases would have been. So it's a tiny space, and it's just mostly a space to work in that also looks pretty. It doesn't really serve any real skill building function aside from the computer, and it doesn't have to be. It's just a small room for the sim that lives there to do their work. Decoration-wise, I try to keep it in that Pinterest, cute farmhouse, aesthetic realm. So I used a lot of the cute items from Cottage Living to decorate the place. For the bathroom, I was a little bit more out of options. As you see, it's very white so far because I really didn't have much to go off. So I just went with it and kept it in that whitish realm, but tried to zhuzh it up a little bit, which is where the ranch pack really came in handy with the white wooden appliances, so it didn't look too white, even though everything was still white. And yes, I even went all out with a pink rug. I really wanted to add something to this place. But other than that, I didn't overdo it with the decorations. Also keeping in mind that I am only going with 2 packs and base game, and I'm somewhat limited, and I didn't want to double use if I could help it. So I didn't want to use everything in the bathroom and kept with the more practical things and a few decorative items. And in the bedroom, I already had the 2 colored walls, and I wanted to add a little bit warmth to the build because so far it was all very white and yellowish and greenish and was all very awake, but I wanted the bedroom to be kind of a quiet space with more darker wood and reddish pinkish tones to just calm you down in a way, sunset-y vibes almost. And it really became my favorite room in the build, with the contrast to the other rooms, but still somehow keeping the vibe enough that it doesn't feel detached from there. It's just the calm home base where you go after a long day, keeping the animals fed and healthy, and where you can just calm down a bit and wind down a bit. And I really like that. Because I used the same packs again, it does feel like it belongs, even though it's darker in tone. You can see that it's the same vibes. It's just, instead of the bright pastels, we have the calm sunset colors, and instead of the brush white wood, we have the dark, more natural wood. But it's still the same idea. It isn't totally detached. And it gave me an excuse to use my favorite rug from the pack. I just concentrated more on the ranch pack with this room because that's a bit calmer and cooler than the cutesy, awake little cottage living room. But of course I added a little bit of cutesy with this little basket that I know is for children's technically, but I would have it and I'm an adult, so the sim can too, okay? No, seriously, that basket is too cute not to use. And I also used a bit of like blankets and stuff in the living room, and just in general a few items scattered here and there. As I said, not too cluttered up, still very tidy, but just to show some personality, to make it not too cold, like have the sim really live there. I think that's important. I also use the glass covered lights a lot instead of the standard mini lights because I feel like they are more belonging into the space. Mostly done with the cottage itself, I can take care of the outside again. And this was also roughly where I decided a pond wasn't enough. I wanted a whole ass river. And that's what I did. I think the decision was a good one because it helped me structure the place a bit more and make it feel less giant. And also it allowed me to build a pretty little bridge, and that's just fucking romantic and fitting for a cottage that is supposed to be on the romantic side. It also ties in the idea more that this is just something that someone put on this little plot of land in the middle of this beautiful nature scenery. I'm also adding another outdoor cooking area because I think with spaces this large, it's important to have little home zones because your sims can take forever to go places. So there is both outdoor cooking space and also a pea bush for when your sim doesn't want to take the whole hike back to the home. Just make it a little bit more practical for everyday simming. And yeah, you see me build the places for the animals now a little bit better. This thing can home a lot of animals. It's a very large space. I wanted this to have that reflected in the animal spaces as well. So you can have 2 horses, a cow or a llama, you can have chickens, you can have mini goats, you can have mini sheep, you can have all the things you want. If you had other packs, like if I was building this with all packs, I would also add bees, etc. pp. So really make this a place large enough to qualify for having a ranch hand. Because you totally can take care of this on your own. Like, I have to stress that this place is so huge, you want a ranch hand and several sims in your household. I've tried playing with this, tweaking the place a little bit, like adding further gates in between the animal enclosures and stuff like this. And still with 2 sims, it was a full-time job for each of them. So you really want to have a handful of sims to work this, or ranch hands to work this. But it's still a very beautiful space that we can have it this large and section it off that way. I like that we got this gigantic lot. And I'm currently just filling it up with a lot of greenery, some of it from debug, just to make the space feel as large as it is. I think greenery and landscaping in general help with that, because if everything's just flat, it doesn't show us much perspective, it doesn't add much frame of reference. But if we add items and trees and plants everywhere, we can really see the size of things and it follows more perspective. I also added a little section with the stones there where you can, you know, sit by the fire and stuff. This will go all wrong soon or not. Spoiler alert on that one. I'm doing a voiceover here because this build took me for fucking ever and I couldn't have done it while also talking to you guys. This section alone, where you see me put plants here, I'm gonna put plants on this whole side of the hill, and this alone probably took me 40 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. So this was quite the build, and I think in the end the video of the raw recording was 7 hours long. So this was quite the task. Building on lots this size is often a taxing idea, and then I had to go and add a hill, and then I had to go and add a diagonal floor plan, and then I had to go and add 5,000 plants. So yeah, I really did this to myself is what I'm saying. It's totally my fault. But I have to admit, I really, really love this build. And it's, by the way, totally underappreciated on the gallery because, as always, the gallery picture looks like trash. So if you want to go download it, I have the link in the description, and I would appreciate it because I worked long hours on this one. I only had parts of the way paved, because that's what I've seen in real life farm situations where they only have sort of like a walkway to the house paved and then it's more or less trails. And I really like this idea for a space this large too, because the build itself was supposed to be a tiny romantic cottage, and if I had paved all the roads in a space this large, it would have been too grand. Especially with a small house, like I would have had to build a larger house and it wouldn't have had looked the same. So I really try to keep it a bit simple, and I think desire path makes sense. So we're at the part of the build where it's really just adding some last finishing touches for me before we hop right into gameplay and let the sim speak for itself. hope you enjoyed my build. I had sure fun building it, and oh my god, there's a fire. Oops. Extinguish that. Oopsie doopsie. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed my build, as I was gonna say before the fire broke out. Don't worry, we have it under control. And I see you for another build sometime soon. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.